Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to have you here joining us for this incredibly important, incredibly validating, I hope, conversation about juggling a career and parenthood. If you're in the entertainment industry, this is a topic that we continually return to here at Women in Film. We know it's an issue for all parents, all caregivers, but we do know that women often disproportionately bear the brunt of caregiving and parenthood. And so it affects our careers, how far we get, the pace at which we can advance. So I am delighted to have you here for this conversation. And I'm very, very excited and thrilled to have this powerhouse panel with you here this evening. I'm also excited. You can see we have a special guest, Mossy and Kirsten Schaefer, our executive director. I wanted to have them on just because I love Mossy so much and she just brings good luck when she's on a Zoom call. But Kirsten has been just an amazing model as a leader, juggling the parenthood challenges. We see Mossy all the time. Mossy is on staff calls. Mossy sometimes calls to FaceTime me when her mom is doing work and needs to get in a word in edgewise. The fact that Kirsten doesn't hide that she is a parent, that she instead celebrates it, that it is part of who she is, and that she makes the rest of us as her employees feel comfortable, is just tremendously, tremendously valuable and vital. And so I wanted to give a shout out to you, Kirsten, for that, for modeling that for us. And also just wanted to show everybody Mossy because Mossy is amazing.
Okay,
so yeah.
Say hi.
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 I hope that many of you watching, joining us tonight, also have your kids in tow. You're probably wrangling them in the background. None of you are on screen, so you might be trying to get them in the bathtub right now as you prop up your phone and listen to this. That's all good. We love it. Again, welcome to all of you. We are delighted to have you here tonight. So as I said, we know that, juggling your career in the entertainment industry with being a parent or caregiver is something that needs to be talked about. It needs to be strategized around. We need to demand better working conditions for everyone. And so I want to, thank the panelists for being here. I want to extend our thanks to the West Hollywood Arts Commission for their incredible generosity year on year for helping us produce programs like this one for the community. And obviously, thank you to all of you for joining us. As always, we welcome your questions, so please post them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window or over in the Facebook chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. Don't worry, you're not going to pop up on screen. If you want to ask a question, just type it in to the Q&A window. We'll read them out, and as I said, we'll get to as many of those as we can. So we have a bunch of wonderful women to introduce you to tonight. We don't have too much time. We've got a 90-minute session, but there's so much to be talked about. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our panelists. First up, we have Erin Cardillo. Her first feature film, Isn't It Romantic?, starring Rebel Wilson and Liam Hemsworth, was released last year in theaters by New Line and Warner Brothers. It can now be seen on Netflix, HBO, and airplanes everywhere. In the TV space, Erin Cardillo and her writing partner, Richard Keith, are in a multi-year overall deal at Warner Brothers Television to develop, write, and produce original TV series for broadcast and cable under their In Good Company banner. The duo, who Deadline described as the most prolific writers in broadcast television, after selling 3 pilots in 2018, and the last year alone have developed pilots with ABC, Fox, Amazon, and HBO Max. Previously, she and Keith created and executive produced the CW series Significant Mother and Life Sentence, and were co-executive producers on the 2nd season of Fuller House for Netflix. Accomplished actress Wendy Braun is currently enjoying her 3rd season recurring on Netflix's Atypical. She's also recently appeared on hit shows including Grey's Anatomy, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Documentary Now, Liza on Demand, and Criminal Minds. She's got over 75 TV and film credits, hundreds of commercials, thousands of voiceovers, and she's combined those decades of invaluable on-set experience with her passion for inspiring others. She's the CEO and founder of actorinspiration.com, where her transformational tools and powerful teachings have helped thousands of actors overcome obstacles and create breakthrough success. She's also the boy mom of 2 exuberantly active sons, ages 9 and 11.
Yes.
Jennica Schwartzman is managing partner at Purpose Pictures Productions, co-founder of Little Sister Entertainment, chapter co-lead of Moms in Film, and a member of the Producers Guild of America and Screen Actors Guild. And she loves tackling a project from idea to distribution as a multi-hyphenate actress, writer, producer. Her credits include Parker's Anchor, Ridge Runners, Gordon Family Tree, and Before the Lights Come Up. She's the author of Movie Baking, the indie work-at-home parent filmmaker, which I desperately hope we talk about tonight, and is a guest writer for a host of acclaimed entertainment industry websites and a highly sought after public speaker. Her multi-state theatrical releases and a recent Walmart exclusive deal have influenced Jennica to reach out and educate the next generation of filmmakers on the changing face of the film industry. She and her husband, producer partner, writing partner Ryan have 2 kids and reside in Hollywood. We have a panelist who will be joining us later on in the evening. We also have some pre-recorded messages from her, sharing her experiences being a parent, finding out she was a parent, how she felt she could reveal she was a parent when she got big jobs. And that's Lena Khan. She's a Canadian-American writer-director who got her start in short films before focusing on music videos for international artists. In 2017, she released her first feature film, The Tiger Hunter, which follows a Muslim Indian immigrant in his journey to America. She's been profiled in USA Today, Teen Vogue, the New York Times, and various other media outlets. She's won Sony Entertainment Television South Asian Excellence Award for contributions to entertainment, and now dedicates herself to making films that call attention to social issues through fun and engaging entertainment. Fun fact, the reason why she couldn't be here for the beginning of the panel is that she's currently in post-production on a new Disney feature, Flora and Ulysses. And finally, our amazing moderator, and I just have to give a shout out to Meghana. I started at Women in Film about a year and a half ago, and Meghana has made sure from the very beginning that we kept this panel on our radar and this issue at the forefront of our minds. So this is someone who has been a dynamic partner to work with on this event. She is someone who wants to make sure that this event is not the last time we talk about this, and that we as an organization are dedicated to expanding resources for parents in the entertainment industry. I'm delighted she can be our moderator for this evening. She's an actress, a writer, and as she says, serial fish out of water. She's originally from Huntington Beach, but then moved to Bangalore, India to begin her acting career, where she was the lead of several Kannada language films. She's now based back in LA, and she's back to her first loves of acting and writing. And her diverse experiences have shown her how beautifully and similarly messy and hilarious we can all be at our core. And she loves exploring that theme in her work. She also serves on the National Asian Pacific American Media Committee for SAG-AFTRA. Just again, as a reminder, tonight's session will last for 90 minutes rather than our usual 60 minutes, because there's just so much to share and learn, and because I want you to hear from all of these amazing dynamic creatives. So be sure to stick around for the Q&A. You don't want to leave early, miss out on the answer to a crucial question that could change your game. Oh, you know what? I just realized before I turn it over that I forgot to introduce Toni Jaramilla, who is, okay, her resume, y'all, just as an employment and civil rights attorney, astounding. I'm going to post links to all of these people's work because you really need to get to know the work that they do. Toni is here to give us background on employment law as it relates to parenthood in the industry, your rights, what you can expect. She has been a fierce advocate for, people in employment law situations. She's also a fierce advocate and activist in the civil rights space. I am delighted to have her joining us here for this panel this evening. Forgive me for leaving you to the end. I missed red as I was scanning through, Toni, but I want to give it now to Meghana as our moderator. I'll be back for the Q&A. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Ebony.
Thank you, Ebony. I want to also say thank you to all the panelists before we get started for taking time out. You all have so many personal and work commitments, and the fact that you're here just means a lot to us at this event. And I also, before we get started, want to thank Ebony, who disappeared now, but she has put up with my pleasant persistence, shall we call it, for the past year and a half or so, trying to get this event off the ground. And she's been an incredible partner to work with. And I just really appreciate that. So thank you, Ebony. Let us get started. So I think with a topic this broad, it's going to be hard to cover everything, obviously. So let's think of this as an introduction, but we hope to cover a few basic things that will be universal, considering how diverse our audience is, considering how parenthood affects everybody differently, depending on so many factors, right? But there are certain things that I think we can hopefully all relate to. So on that note, the first question that I have for everyone, including Toni, is you all shared when we were chatting about the panel, a pretty challenging experience that was kind of a rude awakening in some ways to your dual life as a new parent, and also still trying to maintain your career at the same level that you had before. And I would love to have you start there, because I think that's something that everybody can relate to. So Erin, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Um, yeah, my parenting journey began when I was a co-EP on the second season of Fuller House. I found out I was pregnant a couple weeks after I started the job. And that was interesting. I mean, it was great because I was employed for a set period of time, but also I didn't want to tell anybody that I was pregnant for a while because I had had miscarriages before and I wasn't sure if, it was going to stick around. So the first couple months were sort of challenging as I waited to find that out and tried to figure out how to get to doctor's appointments without telling people while on a sitcom schedule. And it was challenging. And then towards the end of it kind of timed out nicely, but towards the end of my run on that show, I sold a pilot. And in my third trimester, wrote the pilot, was doing network notes the day before I gave birth. My pilot got picked up to be shot when my son was 6 weeks old, and I had to move my whole family to Atlanta when he was 2.5 months old to shoot a pilot. And then we got picked up to series. And so for the whole first year of his life, I was back. I had to, we came back to LA and had our writer's room there, but then we're shooting the show in Vancouver. So I was taking him and my husband and my mother-in-law back and forth to Vancouver the whole year. It was a very interesting moment in time, but that's kind of my story of how parenthood began. A real merger, if you will. Yeah.
Right. No separation at all.
Right.
No. Toni, what about you?
Well, my parenthood journey, so it actually started in the beginning of my law practice. I started my own practice on my own. I always wanted to be a civil rights and plaintiff side employment attorney. And so those are usually attorneys who have their own practice as opposed to working for big defense corporate law firms. And so I had a case and I was representing a woman from UCLA who was sexually harassed by a professor that she worked for. It was one of my first cases. And around that time frame, I got pregnant. I was pregnant. My husband and I were having a baby. And the case was dismissed at the lower level by her prior attorney. I took it up on appeal. And the day of the oral argument before the Court of Appeals, and I was the baby lawyer, so it was my first oral argument, happened to be scheduled, and you don't have a right to go to the Court of Appeal and say, oh, can you schedule it on this day at 3 o'clock? They just tell you when oral argument is. And it was on the day of my due date of my baby. And so I went, and there was, again, no way for me or I was scared to do that. I just wanted to get it over with. So I went to oral argument. I was 9 months pregnant, my stomach up to here, wobbling up to the panel of judges, and the audience was just waiting for me to pop open or pop my baby out. So they were just holding their breath. But I went through the oral argument and it was against this huge firm. Another woman attorney went up and argued. Ultimately, the case, I won. That was my first hearing, my first case at the Court of Appeals, and it was on the day of my daughter's birth. It didn't happen that day, thank God, but it did. A week later, I was late. I gave birth a week later, and I was in my hospital bed after popping her out, and calling clients to make sure, that I was on top of things. And I had a client basically say, wait, I thought you were having a baby. And I said, oh yeah, no, she's sleeping right now. They're like, get off the phone, just go. And so, it was just kind of looking back at it, a rude awakening. I really need to put time out and, really figure out how to balance life and family and not do that to myself. So my second baby, I had her C-section scheduled. So.
And Wendy, you also had some similar circumstances, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to say one thing. First of all, we're learning that babies bring good luck, right? Pregnancies, nothing like, finishing something or getting it done or having things happen. I do want people to know that when I was pregnant, and not showing as an actress, I would come home and I remember just crying in a puddle on the floor, which I'm sure everyone has had those moments. Wondering how the heck I was going to do this with a baby. If I had 5 auditions in one day, how was I possibly going to do this with a baby? And then you just, as you're learning, and I'm learning from you guys, you figure it out as you go. I had, on the second pregnancy, I did The Mentalist when I was 4 months pregnant. And luckily my character was outside in all the scenes. And I booked a couple jobs through pregnancy where I would just tell wardrobe I was a size bigger than I was and hope that they would shoot really soon. I don't recommend that necessarily because you show up and, you might, now I realize, you got to tell them, your agent, when you're going to be showing that you're pregnant. The other thing, I do a lot of voiceover, and I was the voice of Vons actually through 2 pregnancies. My kids are 2.5 years apart. So I had this amazing voiceover gig. I would do 18 spots a week. It would take an hour and a half or 2 hours. And I would do it every week because they had sales. And I basically knew that if I told my agent, I couldn't do it, and it was coming up right until the time I was about to give birth. And I told my agent, if I can talk, I will do the job. If there's no reason I shouldn't be able to speak. So I basically recorded 18 spots for Vons the day after giving birth. Because it partly was because it was a voiceover job. I knew that if they hired some other girl for that week, I might never return. So I wanted to keep the job. So I kept the job, and they did not replace me. And thankfully, knock on wood, I was able to do it for 2.5 years. 3 years time. So it's the up and down of it all. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And Jennica, what about you?
I have no memory of what I told you on the phone, but that happens sometimes when you're talking about your family and life right now. My memory is used in my work life, but my personal life, I have no idea. I had the benefit of, I work in independent film, and I was very privileged to plan pregnancies during post-production. So we would shoot a film out of state, and then during post-production and plan a pregnancy. And then I did the film festival circuit pregnant twice, 2 different films. I did the entire circuit. And on my last child, I accepted an award with my newborn. I flew with a 1-week-old baby to Arkansas and went to a film festival and accepted with a 2-week-old baby an award with her strapped to my chest. And it was just a very exhausting experience to take care of your work and advocate for your work and advocate for your body. And I had lost my insurance through SAG during that because I couldn't get enough work. My agent would tell me about that. And so I got into advocacy because it was wrong and it was just untrue. And people who book don't look like the way I looked when I was pregnant. And people who make movies with pregnant people, they make it fake because people have to have the baby in the movie, because pregnant characters don't just exist in worlds. And when you do see a pregnant character exist in a world, it has to be a story point, because there aren't enough people, I would say, procreating women in decision-making positions to be able to say that there should just be a pregnant woman in the scene for no reason. And I worked with casting directors who canceled one of my auditions. I haven't seen him in 7 years because I was pregnant and he found out from my agent, and I've never been invited back. And then I have casting directors that have put in pregnant women to auditions that there's no reason they would be there, because it's an amazing backstory that this couple is getting engaged and the woman's pregnant. It's an amazing backstory if they're buying a house and she's pregnant. If it's not noted, sometimes casting directors who are procreating women will make those decisions. So I learned on my procreating journey that I have to be an advocate. There's no way back. There just wasn't enough opportunity, and I was very public the whole time. So I'm ready to be public for the rest of the parenthood experience, because people only remember me as that pregnant lady from that film festival anyway.
Well, there's some good that'll come from that, you know, like I think in terms of all the work that you do, and I'm excited to dig into that further in the panel as well. But, you know, before we move ahead, I was thinking, as Ebony mentioned, Lena did pre-record a bit of her perspective as well. And so if you don't mind, I think I'll go ahead and share some of that just so we're all on the same page. It segues really nicely into some of the things you were also talking about. So excuse me for a second while I figure out the tech part of this. Okay.
Hey everybody, I gave some of the organizers bad news. I felt very bad, and I apologize that I wasn't able to make it. Not that you don't have already super other cool people there, but I feel bad for not being able to make it. We found out because of COVID that our scoring session had to be with our orchestra, had to be split into 2 parts, and one of them was going to be in the evening, and I couldn't change it at that point. But I was so excited for having this topic in general, because it's something that has become such a thing, a factor in my life recently. I was telling some of the organizers, and they asked me to share some of the stories of my experience that I've had trying to juggle children with making movies with our other babies. And I feel like that's been so much of the crazy struggle that I've had over the last some years. My first film, at the tail end of it, when I was when we were doing our scheduled portions in India, I was pregnant, and I wasn't telling anybody. I was having nausea, and things smelled bad, especially on fish day when they're going around the city with the fish trucks, and I was gonna die. And we were shooting in the middle of jungles, and it was hot, and it was a little insanity. Then came my second film, and that's when I got to kind of graduate a degree to this like really big, wonderful giant studio Disney film. And I didn't want to mess that thing up. They had given me such an opportunity. So when I was pitching, I didn't tell people I was pregnant again. And then when I was filming, that meant I still wasn't telling people, and I brought to Vancouver with me for a 4-month stay in Vancouver, a baby. And I was nursing and pumping and doing all that sort of stuff. So while not telling people, I was, during location scouts, finding busy restaurants, going into the bathroom, doing the whole pumping thing, doing it before and after, and stealing all those moments while having a baby who, when we were filming, I guess adapted to be able to see me at night. And so he would stay up at night, so he'd kind of see me more then. And that means I wasn't sleeping for the whole time. And it was just, it was certainly the hardest time in my entire life last summer, balancing that. And so I feel so strong about this now, because, honestly, people who have souls and families and know how to love people and want that in their life, but also want the job, are such passionate filmmakers, and we have to support that. And I've noticed so many things that, were helpful along the way, or I wish we had as practices. Maybe together we can all advocate for them. Things like,
I'm going to pause right there because I'd love to well, I'm going to try to pause. Okay. I think I'm back. I'm not frozen, right? We all verified that I'm not frozen. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Tech issues. Okay, so I wanted to pause right there just because I think Lena, some of the points that she is going to make are going to be things that we'll move into. So I thought maybe we can bring her in as we've also talked about it here with the panel. But, a couple of things that came up in your first stories that I thought we could dig into a little bit. Oh, hey, Lena. Live, Lena. I'm so glad you could join us. You just saw yourself. probably.
Oh.
We just did introductions, just talked about some first stories. And one of the things that came up was sort of communication. And I think that's a really important thing that a lot of us weigh for various reasons, privacy, but also, you know, what is important on the job and what is important for people to know. And so, you know, from your various perspectives, both as team members as well as people who are running teams, it would be great if you could weigh in on what you think best practices look like around that when you're expecting a child and or a new mom and or breastfeeding, things like that. So why don't we start with Jennica on this?
I'm an actor, but I'm also a producer, and I've had the benefit of being on both ends of multiple smaller films, and I've had to make the decision at each step of the way. So when you're pregnant, you make the decision. When you're very visibly pregnant, you make the decision. And when you have the baby, and then your next steps and your next steps, and you have to decide and weigh whether or not you want to be an advocate for who you are because it's not normalized yet, versus how much you want to have your own comfort, take care of yourself, or privacy. So there's all these things that you have to take into account. I write a lot about the experience, and I suggest that people speak with their partner and decide with their partner first. And that's the most important thing, is the baby and the partner relationship. If that's not communicating, then when you're out of state somewhere and things break down, you don't have your partner that's backing you because they're not aware of what you need. So you and your partner make those decisions if you have one, if you're lucky enough to have one, and then you let production know. But I think that the people who hire you are the ones in a smaller film. You should ask, who do I talk to? Because I want one point person moving forward. I do not want to explain to so-and-so and so-and-so in a PA what I need. I want one point person, and we have that conversation. And I'm sorry to say that I think at this point, you have to be hired before you can have a lot of these conversations comfortably. Whether or not it's right or wrong or legal, I think that the comfortability of not feeling like you are negotiating against yourself to keep your job is really hard. We're still not at a point where I feel comfortable as a producer and an actor and somebody who would like rain down the hell of lawyers. I still don't feel like I can speak openly. So I'd want to be hired or at least say I'm being hired, call SAG and say, hey, I need an advocate. I need somebody to know that I was being hired, but I'm gonna negotiate motherhood. And if I lose the job while I'm negotiating, I need somebody to know this is happening. So like your partner, your agent, tell someone at SAG and ask for a point person producer, and then spell out what you need and don't need, what your decisions are, if you're going to breastfeed or you're not, how you're going to do that. And you have to make all these decisions, and then you have to keep updating. And when you're on set, I also write about how you should always ask for a department head contact for each department, because you might want to tell the sound department that you're pumping. Because you don't know if they've moved. You don't know when you have a company move who's getting placed where, and if your pumping station is going to be close. If it's locked and you can't unlock, you want to have a point PA. So I think having a point person when you're being hired, point department heads to talk about if you have on-set issues. And I think the first AD should be the person that you have a relationship with, that you can communicate with, no matter who you are on set, because the first AD is going to be making so many decisions with you in mind. But I think that's per production. TV and film don't work the same. International productions might not work the same. There's just so many moving parts. I think you and your partner should write down everything first and then move on from there. That's a lot.
Really solid advice. You know, Erin and Lena, since you both are in a position where you're also hiring people and looking at it from that perspective of people on your team, do you have thoughts on that, like how you would like to be communicated with, or how that should look on your productions as well?
Yeah, I mean, first I just want to say that it's really hard to know when it's okay to speak up. I totally hear you, Jennica, in terms of feeling like the comfort, it's not normalized to talk about pregnancy, to ask for accommodations. Like none of it is normalized, and it should be. So, you know, from my perspective, being a mother and having gone through what I went through, I was really I really loved being able to be in a position. My writer's assistant was pregnant on my last show and was nervous to tell me sort of midway through. One of my actresses was pregnant when she did our pilot and we didn't know. And then she was, you know, going to give birth in the middle of the season. And it was, you know, she was comfortable telling me, which I was so appreciative of. And it made me want to go to the studio and kind of be like, well, why can't this character be pregnant? Why, you know, you know, all this stuff. And there were other, you know, insurance issues and things that I wasn't able to control on some level, but we were able to make sure that when she was able to be in the show, that she had everything she needed, you know, and I was able to take care of her as much as I could that way. And I think the first thing is just having more women and more mothers in positions of power so that we can understand. So for all you, you know, studio people out there, just this should be a really normal thing to hire women in positions of power, to hire mothers, to let us figure out how to support each other, because at the end of the day, I think we all want to. I know my first experience when I was pregnant, I had a showrunner that I was working for that was not supportive of me being pregnant, and sort of said that I, of course, could go to whatever doctor's appointments I wanted to, but then you could tell it was like he resented me for it at the same time. And it was a great learning experience because I was very, I was like, oh, this is really real. This is really interesting. Like, people are really discriminate against pregnant women. Like, I just never knew that. And then it was great to move into a position of power soon after that and be able to be the opposite for other people. So I don't know if I answered the question at all, but I feel like I just wanted to appreciate, Jennica, what you said, because I do think you have to advocate for yourself, and until it's normalized, where that feels like a scary experience sometimes for people. So hopefully you end up with a showrunner or producer or somebody who you can talk to and will understand, because it's hard to go ask for what you need, but it shouldn't be, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I appreciated Jenica's pragmatism here, because that's what we're always sort of balancing. You're balancing the ideal that we hopefully things like this can help us fight for, you know, amongst ourselves, and the reality in which we are trying to survive and thrive, right? And that's kind of what you're always balancing it. And I think it's all about communication, is gauging which of the people, is this person going to be my ally, or is this going to be somebody that I have to survive right now? And I think that's the case always. And it's the best situation is when you get into production, after a little while, you can suss out that you at least get one ally. And that'll be the person that you go to with those needs, and you might open up a little bit. And then I've been on places where you don't have that, or at least for me, like factors even of this production. There was times when I had that ally, things were great, communication. I would finally tell them, like, yes, I do have a child. I really need. And there's the other ones where you have to figure out to get what you need for you and your family in a way that isn't bringing up the things that people don't treat very well. So for instance, like there was a certain person, a couple people in my production that I had just a certain disposition with. I was very kind of like guarded about things, and they just knew that they just figured that's the way I was, even though I'm actually a very open person. But for them, if I had to do something, like, I have a commitment at 7 on such and such a day. And they just knew that. They don't know if it's a business commitment. They don't know if it's a whatever, but it shouldn't matter if you get your job done, which we always do. And so that's kind of what I figured. You figure out what you're going to do with each person, and then you try to get high enough on the food chain, which we can't always do at the beginning, or often, to actually advocate in a real way for the things we need. And this doesn't have much to do, but reminding me of what you're talking about. The weird part is, I've noticed it's not even the fact that you have children. It's that you are female and you have children. And I just gotta say, like, in the past couple of weeks, some stuff has come up because I've started delving a little into TV directing. There are so many dudes who have children, and they might have male partners. So both of them are doing exactly the same childcare responsibilities that I am doing.
and nobody gives them flack for the thing. They'll straight up be telling them like, bring their kid on set. I got to go back because, you know, my partner is doing this right now, or whatever it is, or maybe he's a single dad, whatever it is. But it's the female of it that triggers something in people's brains. And I think that's what we really need to start railing against and just like fix that, because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, completely.
Amen.
I actually think this would be a great point to bring Toni in, because, you know, one of the things is, you're right, reality is often different from what is actually true legally. And, you know, that is something we have to navigate. But I think one of the problems I've encountered, at least, maybe you can speak to the same, is it's kind of hard to figure out what the legal rules actually are. You know, a lot of our industry fellows, colleagues don't know. And so Toni has generously offered to give us a brief overview of some things that do apply to us, and, you know, specifically whether you're hired via a contract or whether you're a legal employee, rather, whether you're an independent contractor, the rules may be different, and what you choose to do with them, of course, is up to you, but it's at least a good starting point to know. So Toni, I'm going to hand it over to you now to give us a brief overview.
Sure. Brief is hard. There's so many laws, but the good news is California is one of the most protective states in terms of laws and women's rights and equal rights in employment. We have a lot of advocates, including myself, that's up at the Capitol fighting for expansions of the laws that protect us as women and working mothers. And so there's a lot of things that apply that we can look to as far as leave time, protected leave time, accommodations for a disability and a pregnancy disability, bonding time, and so forth. So one recommendation that I have is to go on the website of the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. That's the state agency that is charged with protecting workers and making sure that the anti-discrimination laws are enforced for all employers. It covers employers of 5 or more. So a lot of small production companies are covered by this law, and workers that are employees that are with small production companies are covered. There was a new law that was in place very recently that Governor Newsom signed, and that is Senate Bill 1383. And that provides for small employers that you have to give protected leave time for women who are pregnant or off for maternity, or for issues of disability. So it's expansive. It also applies for family. It's the equivalent of the Family Medical Leave Act. That's the federal law. There's also the pregnancy disability leave. That'll give up to 4 months of leave time. And when I say leave, protected leave, that means that when you take time off under these leave protections, you're guaranteed to be able to return back to your same or similar position. And so it's one where I would say that when you feel or you believe or your doctor tells you that you need some leave time for your pregnancy, to notify your employer, whether it's a human resource, whether it's management, but whether it's I know the industry is structured, differently in different production companies, but just like in a kind of your average office type of employer, there's going to be a person that's going to be handling HR stuff or accommodations. So you go to that person, you notify them, give them whatever doctor's note that you have to request that leave time, and your position should be protected. There's also, of course, the disability laws that apply and that protect people on the basis of course, gender, age, race, etc. And those all apply, as in the employer-employee relationship, as well as a relationship that's not quite an employer-employee relationship. It's like a business, a relationship that's like a writer that's an independent contractor. So those laws are there whether or not you're independent, or you're an employee, or you're exempt, or you're non-exempt. So the different statuses of employment, the laws are there to protect you. So my recommendation, like I said, is the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. It's ca.gov. There's a chart there that gives all the protections of leave time and paid leave, and the laws that apply for discrimination based on your gender or pregnancy. And I think that one thing to remember too, and we're talking about, when do you speak up? People are afraid to ask for an accommodation, is to remember that the laws also protect you from retaliation for invoking your right to an accommodation, for invoking your right to ask for leave, for invoking your right that you're not paid equally as a woman or as a person of color. Anytime you raise those issues to your employer, and something happens adversely towards you, you're fired from the position, you're demoted, you're sent to an assignment in Timbuktu, anything adverse, you have protections. You have a whole separate claim there for retaliation. And when I say claims, a lot of times people think, oh, does that mean I have to file a lawsuit? It's going to be public record. There's so many reasons why people don't want to come up and speak up. But what I say is that's why the laws are there, is to protect you, and we do need to stand up and assert those rights, not just for accommodations or leave, but also fair pay. California has one of the strongest fair pay acts that just got signed into law a couple of years ago, where if you're working and doing the same or similar job as a man, even if you can't prove like it's because you're a woman, all you got to show is that you're doing the same or similar job, and you're getting paid less, or your compensation package, whether it's benefits in addition to base salary, is less. There's claims there, and you can fight for them and get parity in terms of salary and compensation. So there's lots of really strong protections under the law and in California. And I say, stand up and fight for those.
Thank you, Toni. And I know, Jennica, one of the things that we wanted to mention was what Moms in Film LA is trying to put forward as well. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, the Moms in Film co-founder, Christy Lamb, who's watching, reminded me that we have parental inclusion clause that for a few years ago, she had shared it with me, and it seemed like such a groundbreaking thing to ask for, that it's a clause, it's very short, and it asks for employers to offer 50 to 100% subsidy for the cost of childcare to all members of cast and crew above and below the line, as well as either to pay directly, like individual stipends, or implementation of on-site childcare. And even though the clause is voluntary, the idea is to normalize parent-friendly practices. And if agents and people are in powerful positions and people who can advocate and feel comfortable advocating can include the parental inclusion clause and also be qualified with a stamp or a seal that their production does this, then it would change hiring practices. It would change, how like when an amazing company starts and you're like, Shondaland, I want to work there. Like having a seal or something that people can look up to and say, I want to work there. Everything I do from now on is all towards, I want to work with these types of companies. Then it makes all the other companies feel like, well, that's something we should probably work on. Like, diversity and parental inclusion, we'll just put it all in the things that, we have these initiatives we're working towards. This should be one of those initiatives that we're working towards. And I sent you the language. Christy and I will put up the language online, and we'll start pressing it more places, because as a producer, I loved seeing that this is exactly tangible lobbying that I can get behind as a producer. And as an actress, I feel like I'm going to send this to my agent and be like, this is what we're doing from now on. And everybody I come in contact with, I want to say that, because just having the wording, it's very simple and short wording, feels like somebody else is behind you, feels like we all agree on something. There is just a lot more you can do when you're not the only one. Like Toni was saying, like you can do these things, but if you feel like you're not the only one and you feel like it's normal to do this, then you just are more likely to just do it. Otherwise, it, you know, stopped me for years from advocating until I just needed to do something. And having that tool, that resource really changed my perspective.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, that's one of the things, just so all the attendees know as well, we definitely want to take this conversation forward. We want to share resources. Community and knowledge are the greatest antidotes to this kind of problem that we're facing, this kind of fear and these kinds of restrictions. So we'll figure that out and that'll be forthcoming, but just know that we'll be sharing more for those who are interested.
I think about advocating. I was wondering if I get it, because I was talking to some people recently and also have to jump back to the orchestra in a moment. But it's interesting because when we started having these conversations, even in the DGA, like it would come up in the Women's Steering Committee and things like that, and there'd be small pockets of people who are like, yeah, we should start advocating for these sorts of things. I wonder, as we're all, hopefully some people will start those conversations, if we should not just be females advocating for it. It's meaning like, so for instance, when I think you said my video played where I talked about the Evercast thing.
I didn't get to that part yet, but
okay, so I don't want to repeat it, but basically the point is I was advocating for this thing even before COVID hit that would help me save the drive for things where I didn't really have to drive. Like you have to drive an hour and a half for a 20-minute meeting for an executive. And I'm like, why? There's software for this, you know? And there's even editing software. And I got flack from a lot of people for it, except for guys. I got flack from the women. And it's when that software was created by a guy so that he could work with Michael Bay and edit remotely. And I found so often that when it is seen as a women's issue, not that we should be nervous about women's issues, but when it's seen as because this is not just a women's issue. And I think sometimes we're gonna provide a lot of the power behind that, but I wonder if we try to incorporate like kind of guys in the fight for parental and family and things like that, because it's just taken very different. Not that should, you know, constrain us, but it just had come up recently, so I thought about it. I'll be back in a little while.
Thank you.
It is a family issue. That's how it's, you know, it's a family issue, you know, Family Medical Leave Act, it's family, because the leave laws would apply to a father as well as to a mother. And so I think she makes a very good point that it's not just women issue, it's our family, it's about our family.
Yeah, completely. And I know
I don't
that
want to step on any toes. Sorry, I just wanted to add, I've been dealing with this for 7 years since I've had kids, but one of my partners is a man who's now the primary caregiver for his children, just by everything that's changed in the last few months. I don't know if you know about it, but doing distance learning and being the primary caregiver and working from home and working in the film industry, which is more flexible where you can be right now for some people. I now work, like most of my partners are men who are doing distance learning and taking care of their children as primary caregivers. And I feel like very free to talk to them. I know why he or she is effective. Like, I get it. Like, when somebody is in a similar position or understands it finally, I just feel like, oh my gosh, we need to be working in this area. I feel more comfortable asking for them to work with me on things that matter to me in an advocacy way, not just conversation, because they're all in a similar position, and distance learning was the great equalizer for some of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I wanted to say a couple of things. One is that, again, like I know that Jennica is working on a new initiative. If we have time, we can also talk about it. That is more inclusive, right? It's not just moms in film. It's also inclusive of other people who are caregivers. The other thing I wanted to say also is just, it's obviously there's a lot of negative things that have happened with the pandemic. Don't want to understate that, but I do think one of the silver linings has been this sort of dichotomy between work and life for a lot of people has disappeared. And so in some ways, I think that that's the way it always was, actually. Like in our minds, they weren't necessarily always separate, but now it's in everybody's face. And I do hope that presents an opportunity for all of us. I wanted to shift gears to talk about sort of you and your personal lives and how you navigate your roles as moms and, you know, the powerhouses that you are in your work as well. And I wanted to start with Wendy on this one to just talk about some practical things that people can take away from tonight to that have helped you, and everybody's answers will be different, but practical things that help you have your work and life, your work and parent roles support each other.
Yes. I think the realization that you missed when they inject guilt into you when you have a baby, that's just there. It's going to be there. You're going to feel bad at times. You know, when you're at work, you're going to wish you were home. And sometimes when you're home, you might think, wow, it'd really be fun to be on set, depending. But one thing that helped, a couple of things that helped me was just the language to help my kids, especially when they were younger, to know that me being a working parent was okay on both ends. And I would just say, literally say, I would say, mommy goes away, mommy always comes back. And I would teach them to say that, and they would say it, and I would say it. And then when I would come back, they would be like, mommy comes back. And then that way, mommy going away, even though, yes, there were tears at times, and, you know, especially when they're really little, but the language just helped them to feel better about mommy going away. That part of it was just, it was almost like their own mantra. Mommy comes back, mommy comes back. And then when I would come back, they started to adjust to it, and they understood it. And it was, I guess, probably my way of maybe not feeling so guilty, but I could see that it also helped them to adjust more quickly and understand that it wasn't forever. It was just for this time, you know? So that was one thing. And then the other thing was just, you know, and I think it speaks, I think someone in the chat asked about like, how do you do it now? And one of my other favorite mantras is like, I can have it all, I just can't do it all. So you can't, you know, clean the house and do the laundry and make food and play with the kids and learn your lines or write a script and storyboard your film all at once in the same hour, right? So you have to learn to delegate. And when you learn to delegate, you also learn to give up control of how you wanted things. And then when you give up the control and you allow people to help you, even if it's a neighbor or a friend or your spouse or your boyfriend or whatever situation you're in, you're also allowing yourself to appreciate the person for helping you. So I think a lot of times it's strong women who are doing it all and then having a baby, you know, you got to give up some control of something, you know? I used to think, well, I like my towels folded a certain way, you know? Well, I know that's like a ridiculous example, but maybe it isn't, because if you like your towels folded a certain way and you want to do everything, you know what? You're going to have to either tell someone, here's how I like them folded, thank you, or just not care. So you tend to, my kids are older, that's why my office is like neat now. But when they're little and the house is crazy, you know, you just have to find ways to balance. And know that, you know, to me, it's about progress and not perfection for everyone in the house. And then it teaches the kids too, like, it doesn't all have to be perfect. We all make mistakes. You know, there's days I get sad. It's telling them, you know, I went out and I didn't get this job and I thought I was awesome and they thought I was awesome and I still didn't get it. It's teaching them all of these beautiful things we get to teach them by choosing to be a working parent. So those are a couple of things.
Thank you. Thank you. Erin, would you like to add to that?
Oh, I just loved all those things that you said.
Thank you.
Yeah, especially because my son is little and he does get angry sometimes when I have to work. And it's been obviously more challenging during the pandemic because he doesn't have as many places to go without me, you know. So it's definitely challenging. But yeah, in terms of the question again was about just personal strategies for balancing. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of lucky in that I can set my own work hours, and I currently, because I'm in development and I don't have the show in production. When I'm in production, I can't set them as much, and that is definitely a challenge. But I'm taking advantage of the time that I'm in development where I can set my hours. And to me, I used to work, you know, 9 to 12 hours a day. Like when I was first starting out, I just was obsessed with work and writing, and I just, you know, was always doing it in my spare time, and well, not spare time, but just always doing it. And and there was a lot of perfectionism, like combing over things and making sure they were perfect and making sure every word, and and I definitely, I've now gone to like especially during the pandemic, I'm like, it's a 4-hour workday. That's just what it is. And I've actually found that I'm way more efficient and I get a lot more done and I don't obsess over things as much and I let it go. And I know there's going to be another chance to go over it another day, but I've kind of, I've found sort of, that I was like forced into efficiency when I, through circumstances, and then have realized since that it allows you to have more balance when you're not so obsessive over making everything perfect, or like, exactly how you'd want it. And I do think that that goes to parenting as well. Like I have a nanny, my husband, is also a very active co-parent. My in-laws and my parents are involved, and not everybody does things the same way, and it's infuriating and also fine, and the kid is fine. Just, you also have to kind of let go of some of the like, but I would have done it differently, or I wish I was there when he fell that time, or I wish I was there to put him to bed that night, or something like that. But you also have to feel like, well, our kids are not just extensions of us. They're their own people and they have their own experiences, and they, chose a working parent for a reason, is what I like to think. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. Do you all just wonder sometimes what you did with all that time before you had kids? Really, like, why did it take me so long?
Yes.
Jennica and Toni, if you have some tips for us to weigh in with, love to hear them as well.
I don't have any magic, revelations. I just look back and I tell myself, what, similar to like what Wendy's saying, don't spread yourself too thin, learn to say no. I'm always pulled in so many directions. Can you be on this committee? Can you do this? Can you, take on this case? And whereas I would feel like I want to save the world and I want to take every case that comes in because I want to help them, even if they have no case at all, like, let me just help you. You got to learn, or I had to learn to say no, because there's only 24 hours in a day, and I need to reserve that time for my kids and my family. And the other thing is I have to learn to forgive myself. Because I look back and I'm so hard on myself, like, I should have spent more time, doing this with my daughters or what have you. And I look back and I'm like, why was I beating myself up? My girls are fine. They're like, strong women. They're 19 and 22 now, so they're grown and I don't have to. And I've always, like, when they're little, like my story, I'm like arguing at the Court of Appeals with my baby about to come. And it's like, I look back going, could I have been a better mom? Could I have done it differently? And I just have to say, you know what? You did just fine. You did, you did just fine. Your girls have kind hearts. They're smart. They're, ambitious. And we forgive ourselves and we're fine. We did fine, and not to be hard on ourselves. So that's what I say to everyone.
A really good reminder
awesome.
for all of us.
I agree. I don't think that we should just be saying like they're just okay. I was raised in a ministry. Like my parents were pastors, and watching my parents do and contribute and serve and fail and cry and lose their shit, like everything that they do made them better humans for me to understand more about the world. Like mom and dad not being there is hard, partners not being there for them is hard, but I think that when it's done on purpose Like you were privileged enough to pick the people that you want to take care of your children, which is just so amazing that we get to do that. Being able to choose when to take work and when not to take work, like it's so good for our kids to see us. My girlfriend I was talking to the other day, she was saying like it was really hard for her talking to her daughter about these things that were going on because they were just so painful and emotional. And I was like, that's wonderful. I hope you lost your shit. I hope they see what true like mommy at her worst looks like a few times and watch you recover, watch you work through it, watch you become, you know, the person you're going to be. And so I take my kids with me everywhere. If camera's not rolling, then my kids are in the room. Like hopefully they're in the next room for like rehearsals. But I started inviting people to my home and having lunch with them. And I started doing things in my home so that people can normalize the fact that, oh, Jennica always has her kids with her. Like the people who keep coming back are the people who I will work with, the people who I will creatively like create stuff with, the people who have relationships with my children, because we had our first meeting in my home, this stranger that I invited into my home. At our next meeting, when I bring my kids to that meeting, it's not going to be surprised, like, oh, they come together. Good to know. And then when we work on something, it's not a surprise that, well, my husband and my kids need to be there too. So let's book their flights. Like none of these things should be surprises because I start with, I like this person. Ooh, Wendy, Toni, Erin, Megan, you guys are great. You want to come over for lunch at my house sometime? Because then you'll never go back from seeing me as a mom. And I know that there's a lot of issues with that in the industry of not becoming the brand of a mom. And I know what the cost is, but I already paid it because I would rather be my whole person around my kids all the time and have them be whole people who understand what work-life balance looks like in front of them when it's good and when it's bad. I think that makes them better because I'm really lucky to have a good supportive partner. And I feel like when you ask Megan, I like for specific, tangible things is find the partner. And if you don't have that partner now, it's really not worth being around. Get the partner who you need to be. And that could be your sister. That could be your cousin. That could be your mother-in-law. If it's not your partner that you're espoused to, if you're lucky enough to have somebody, but you need to find that partner because that's the balance, the tipping, the person who helps, the person who will have to take the crying child off of your lap for you to finish the phone call. You need that person. So find that person. That's the tangible thing.
Thank you. Yeah. And I mean, I think it takes a village. The village doesn't have to be your traditional family necessarily, right? It could be other people in your life who come in various paths, and that's just so essential for the support. Thank you all. We are just about heading into Q&A. Before we transition into that as a sort of final question to end on a happy note, and everybody in this group will probably enjoy a happy parent story. So I would love for you each to share a time where you did feel that balance and where you did sort of feel the integration of your parent life and your work life and whatever that means to you, however that looked to you. That would be a great place to end, I think. So Wendy?
I'm just laughing about, talking about the integration of kids and working, my kids, they literally, from, they're 9 and 11 now, but from like 5 until from when they were about 5, when they understood I was going somewhere till now, they literally do not care what I'm working on, who it's with, whatever. They just want to know what I'm bringing home from craft service. Do I have candy corn around Halloween? And the biggest thing when I was doing Atypical and we were shooting in Valencia, we're in Hollywood now, but when we were shooting in Valencia, they were just, they're like, I will tell people like the kids do get to a certain age with like, yeah, mommy goes away, mommy always come back. They're like, fine. Like they're okay with you leaving. But then because we shot in Valencia, if I didn't come home with a Marie Callender's pie, like that was really the only thing that I needed to be presenting. And then they were just like thrilled I was back. The other thing I will say really quick is that I would always take a moment to reset in my car. Like I think parenting is about taking mindful moments when you can to just like 3 seconds to just when you pull up in the driveway to just take a moment of I'm in charge of the energy I bring in the house And no matter what I had happen throughout my day, and of course you share it if it's, you know, you've shared the ups and downs, but to just realign my energy before I come into the house. And what I will say is a beautiful moments I've had is where when I'm trying to take my 3-second mindful moment and the kids come running out because they're so happy to see me. So now my advice would be, if you want to take a mindful moment, you need to park like a little bit before your driveway because they're going to come out. So you got to, you know, so I've learned, but it's just, you know, being a mom and an actor and an entrepreneur and everything I do in this business, I'm a fuller person. And I feel like my kids have a fuller life and have learned so much because of what they've seen me do and go through. So anyone who's watching, who's wondering if you can do it, I think this panel has been an amazing testament of, yeah, you can. It's up and down and sideways, but you can. And you got to bring home a pie, basically.
Toni, do you have a story to share?
I guess I as far as happy, where I feel like, yeah, I feel like I did it right. I think it's always around, you know, Thanksgiving really is a special day because it is where everyone comes to. I have a big extended family, lots of cousins. I'm Filipino, so tons and tons of, you know, cousins, and everyone's an auntie and an uncle, and coming together and really giving thanks and having, you know, my girls and my husband, and we're all together. Those are just what kind of warms my heart and I look forward to. I don't know, with COVID now, I don't know what's going to happen this Thanksgiving, but I'll know that at least, you know, the 4 of us, my 2 girls and my husband, we're going to, you know, we always come together and we share, you know, kind of the things that happened to us in the past year. And, you know, when you have teenagers, they never want to hang out with you. They never, you know, they're always embarrassed. At least my girls are like embarrassed of, you know, not want to share. But for the holidays, it's one where everyone just kind of puts things aside and it's just about family. And that's when I'm like, yeah, you know, me and my husband, we did it right. We raised them right, and we're, you know, feels good.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. What about you, Erin?
All right. So a moment of balance, or where it just feels right. So, yeah, I mean, I have one specific memory of being on set shooting my pilot when my son was, I guess he was like 3 months old at the time. And I brought him, he was not always on set. He was sometimes with my husband and my mother-in-law. But this one time he came, and our video village was outside and it was a beautiful day. And he just came and sat with me at Video Village for a while. And I like breastfed while watching the monitors. And I just felt, I was like, this is like, I'm doing it. This is everything. And that was definitely a moment that just felt very like, everything just like felt possible, you know.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Beautiful picture. And Jennica, what about you?
There was a moment in, we had a movie come out, and my son was 3.5 or so at the time, and I had a very young baby daughter. And there was just a really nice moment where we were outside before Universal City Walk, and our film poster was there, and it's my face on it. And my husband showed me, there's a picture that made me cry so hard. It's a picture of my little boy, because I've taken him to the movies a bunch because I'm a cinephile who like took my kid to the movies since they were 6 months old. But like mommy and me screenings, so it doesn't ruin anybody else's day, but like I get to watch movies and just breastfeed the kid and whatever. So I always took him. So he's been to movie theaters a lot, and he saw our poster, and there's a picture of him kissing the poster because, oh, mommy's here, and took a big picture of like kissing mommy, and then like went into the theater. Like, I had so many friends come and be supportive on our opening when we did, when we were in the theater here in LA, and a lot of people, every single one of them saw me with my baby on me and my son there, and it just was like such a different thing than they thought they were going to show up for. I can tell it was like a magical, the whole evening was magical, that this chick with a bunch of humans on her, like, you wrote it, you made it, you produced it, you're in it, like it actually happened. There's proof. It's right here. It's hard to ignore. Please work with me on the next one. Like, I kept saying that to people. It was magical. Yeah.
So sweet.
Well, I have a quick video from Lena, who shared her answer to this question. So I just want to play that, and then I'll pass it to you, Ebony. Sound good? Okay. So 1 second.
I forgot one thing. I was asked to share a memory of when work and home life balance was good. I think a memory was, this isn't when balance was good, but it was an adaptation that I was very happy, was that even while things were going really crazy, and to be honest, like, that was, when I was filming, it was the worst summer of my, it was the hardest summer of my life, and even with all the provisions that I hope are made to help support parents in the industry, if you're a director or anything like that, like those positions that have that big load, I can't imagine it's ever really easy. But I made sure to always, on my way to work, record a video. And that video would be a story for my son, and I'd have the printouts for him at home of the books, or vice versa. And he would cherish those so much. And he'd tell me about them when I got home. Sometimes he'd stay up, sometimes he'd be sleeping, or when I FaceTimed with him. And it just felt good to see that he was okay. He was okay. As long as I figured out those ways to maintain a connection with him, we could all survive this, what is relatively short stint while I was doing the movie, till I had some semblance of work-life balance back. So hopefully we can all figure out our ways.
That is the sweetest thing I've ever heard.
This
was so wonderful and so just lovely. I can't think of anything less corny to say, but I'm over here just having all of the feelings right now. Thank you all so much for sharing that. I'm looking at, viewer comments on Facebook and here and Zoom, and I just agree with everyone who's watching, who's saying this is such a wonderful commentary from some amazing women. They're just finding this conversation so helpful. Just to hear someone else say, you know what, you can be okay with your house being a mess so that you can get work done, or you can choose to care about how your towels are folded, but that doesn't mean that maybe you don't have the time to care about something else. Just hearing someone else say that is so incredibly, validating and wonderful. And it's something that clearly people need to hear. So yeah, we have time for a couple of questions. We have someone here in Zoom asking, I keep seeing articles about COVID era productions where the whole cast and crew isolate for weeks at a time to film safely. How is this doable if you have children? Will this trend keep parents or caregivers from being able to be hired for productions? Can any of you speak to that?
I've only heard, I don't know how every production's working. I do know some people who've done it and they've quarantined with their families, like they've taken their kids and they had the ability to do that, which I don't know that, and sometimes taken their spouses, which not everybody has the ability to do. But I do think we're sort of in a COVID world for a little while with production, and I don't know if that's the new norm forever, but it could be the new norm for a year or two. So I feel like, you know, that is something to grapple with. But I do think that productions are amenable to people bringing their families with them, you know, for that.
Yeah,
From
Lenny,
what I've heard.
Lena, you just popped back on. The question was, in this era, this COVID era, where productions involve the cast and the crew isolating, perhaps for weeks at a time, you know, how is it doable if you have children? And, you know, is this a trend that would keep parents and caregivers potentially from being hired for productions? As someone who's currently in post-production now on a feature, did you want to weigh in on that, on, you know, the COVID protocols and whether that might be a stumbling block for parents?
I've actually wondered the same thing. I would love as much advice as anybody else, because even now, like I had 2 jobbers at the same time, and I was fortunate to get one that was local, but the one that was in Canada, I would have taken it pre-COVID, but now we have to quarantine for 2 weeks, and they already weren't covering childcare for that time. And so I wouldn't be able to leave. And I took my kids with me last summer when I shot there. And this time I wouldn't be able to do any of that. So I'd have to leave like very small children for like a good 4 or 5 weeks. And so I couldn't do it so did anybody have ends? I don't know what we're gonna do. So it's tricky.
Did they tell you you weren't allowed to take your kids with you, or was that just
I only got into it softly, but yes, they did. They said even like some of the key creative people were periscoping in. They weren't even, you know, on set. So
got it.
They were pretty tight about things.
I don't think that a lot of people should be too scared about that happening unless, like you said, there's travel involved. Because here, like in LA, when we're working, or my son was on a commercial, like with testing and what we have available in Los Angeles and what productions you're doing, quarantining for most people who are just concerned about going back to work is not going to come up unless you're traveling for the most part, or unless the subject matter requires it for other reasons, which you could still do with your family if it's local. But I don't think that people should be too scared about losing it. But I do think with 1,000% certainty that, like what Lena said, we should take that to heart. We will not be prioritized. So when you are hiring people, I'm looking at the camera instead of your faces so I can like speak to you people watching. When you're hiring people, prioritize families. You just have to.
I was just going to mention, it doesn't quite answer the question, but I was going to mention that there is this federal Families First coronavirus response emergency paid family leave. That's kind of long sentence, but it provides that if a employee is required to quarantine, or there's a coronavirus related situation, such as no childcare for your child who is, or your child's school is closed, so you have to stay home and do distance learning, that you're eligible for up to 10 weeks of paid leave, about 2/3, at the rate of 2/3 your salary. And so that's in place till up to $10,000. So there's these various laws that are coming in, a lot of new developments that addresses COVID related absences and leaves.
We've had a couple people asking whether we've got an incredible broad spectrum of panelists here, you know, representing many different roles, you know, writer, director, producer, you know, actor. And so, you know, you bring to this panel a wealth of experience across a range of, you know, media, including film and TV. Do you have a sense of whether film or TV sets tend to be more accommodating for parents? You know, like in your experience, where have you found the most accommodation, the best attitudes, et cetera? Has it tended to be in film or television, or does it seem roughly similar to you?
I'll start with negativity because that's fun. I work in independent film, and I'm very excited about accommodations, but financially, I'm not able to make those decisions every single time. I'm not able to do much every single time. There's so much squeezing that happens in independent film that I can't imagine that I would be getting the same protections with my colleagues in that arena as when I walk on set as an actor in TV. I'm treated with a little bit more respect. It's a little bit more of a machine. There's a little bit more accountability to a network about what you do or don't do, leaves them open for litigation. I think on independent film sets, people just assume that I've worked with that I'm not going to accommodate them, which is not always the case. And we don't have the budget to just say, oh, we will do this thing because it's better. We just make the decision to not have as good something on the screen because I want to work with the people. But I don't know, in my experience, TV, Erin, you might have so much more here to share.
I can't really speak to whether TV or film is better. I think it has to do with the level of production, with who's in charge of the production, if the producers are people who are fighting for people to have those accommodations or not. I think it's really case specific. I don't know if it has a TV or film thing.
Mhm.
I will say, just as an actor, you know, having been an actor with kids for a decade, the feeling is it's never been like, how can you help me with my kids? It's like, I have to figure out what to do with my kids so I can go to work, because no one really, it's not their job to deal with my kids. So, and I've known that, and that's just been what it is. And throughout pregnancies, as Lena was talking about before, I found my best ally was the wardrobe department as I was dealing with something. If I got hired and was pregnant and was a little bit showing, then I would make that my one person, you know. But as an actor, I've just found the way, and my husband's an actor as well. We've just found the way day to day to figure out how to manage the family, so one of us can go to work.
Mhm.
But it never has been, how do we bring the family to work?
Mhm.
You know, as far as, you know, unless it's, you know, a series shooting in Vancouver and you move the whole family to Vancouver or something like that, you know.
Right, right.
And on the COVID note, I just want to say he worked on General Hospital. To Jennica, what you're saying, he just worked 2 weeks ago, got a COVID test, went to General Hospital, did the work. He just passed on something today that'll shoot like somewhere else that we just thought it wasn't worth what it was and all that. And, you know, I have something that could be in Hawaii. And then you think, and my kids are like, great, let's go to Hawaii. It's perfect timing because there's no school or there's, you know, distance learning. So it is very up in the air, and every situation with this is, you know, it's just a day at a time, you know, COVID or not, really, as far as how do you manage the family part of it. So I hope that's helpful, kind of.
Yeah, I think, you know, as you and Jennica and Erin were saying, like, it's less about the platform and it's more specific to the project and the people who are working on the project. So it's not as if, you know, as an actor or a director or whatever, you can just say like, you know, I work in film, so it's going to be a lot easier for me.
Right.
You know, it's always going to be a matter of negotiating, you know, the particular set that you're on and the people that you're working with.
I would say probably the most forgiving world would be voiceover and animation, because you can just be, you know, you can work in your pajamas.
Right. Toni, realistically, you know, how easy is it, or easy perhaps isn't the word, but how likely is it that someone can find resolution to an issue, justice for an issue, if they do feel as if they've been discriminated against, you know, on set, if they've experienced harassment for being a parent, if they think, you know, perhaps they aren't getting jobs, they're getting turned away from things because they're pregnant or a parent, really, like, where do they start if they think, okay, I need to address this, whether they're gonna, you know, have a lawsuit or not, you know, but where do they start? And then how likely is it that they're gonna actually get some of the answers they need?
Ooh, okay. So 20, however many years I've been doing this. And I'm a very optimistic person, but very realistic too. I think, where does it start? It's going to start. I think a person knows the dynamic between themselves and who their higher up is, who they report to. And I think to pick someone who, someone above you, someone that you report to, if it's not, you know, HR or what would be deemed as an HR in the industry, to discuss the issues. If you have a union, you know, that's another place to go. They're supposed to advocate for you. I've found that, you know, sometimes just that direct contact with someone you feel you have a good enough dynamic with to raise the issue of that you're having, whether it's, you know, an accommodation, whether it's your salary or whatnot. As far as how realistic it is to have it resolved in-house, it's very realistic. You know, I think that, you know, depending on how, you know, obviously it depends on the dynamics there, but I think it is very realistic. I've seen many, many times where an issue is resolved without having to go to litigation. Sometimes it takes hiring an attorney to speak with you or for you with their counsel. Sometimes it's elevated to that. But I think start off in-house, you know, without taking the gloves off and having a you know, a heartfelt conversation if you think you have that kind of relationship. And I've seen it get resolved that way before it has to elevate further up. Some organizations are just notorious to be very anti-worker, and that you know, if that's the kind of situation you're in, then it, you know, I think it's one to take, you know, to have someone advise you, a professional advise you, you know, a lawyer, or even I mentioned the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, which is the civil rights agency. You could go there too.
I have really loved having all of you here for this tonight. This has been absolutely wonderful. I want to thank everyone who's been watching, tuning in. I know we've had some audience members from the East Coast who are like, I got to tap out. I worked too hard keeping these kids up today. Erin, I know that you called in from the East Coast. I can't believe, you know, thank you so much for being so gracious with us, you know, because it is late where you are. This has been fantastic. As Megan mentioned, we will be posting resources on the Women in Film website. So if you're worried that you missed something that Toni said, or something that Jennica mentioned, you know, you just want to check out what Moms in Film does, we're going to be posting these resources for you because we want to make sure that you know you're not alone in this. Other people have gone through it before you. There are people going through it now with you, and there's support out there. And we want to make sure that Women in Film is the support that we can be for you. So we'll be sharing those resources. If you have questions, if you'd like us to connect you with organizations or with people who can help you deal with these issues, please let us know. We are here to advocate for women in the screen industries. And so that means taking care of the whole person, not just when they clock in and out, which is something we don't do in the entertainment industry anyway. It's not just a regular 9-to-5 job. So thank you for speaking to all of these issues. I really, really am so grateful. I know how much work it takes to just get through your regular job and then to come on and share your wisdom with us. I know you got kids in the background who are like, Mom, I need something. So thank you again. And yeah, as a reminder, this is not the last conversation we're going to be having about this. You know, I'm conscious of the fact that, you know, we've got a panel full of cisgender women, you know, here. This is something that affects all parents and caregivers, and we want to expand the conversation, not limit it. So stay tuned for further, you know, editions of this conversation, and we hope that you'll come back for all of it. Megan, I thank you for being an amazing moderator. Thank you, Jennica, Toni, Wendy, Erin, Lena. So glad you were able to come in. I know that you had to dip in and out, but it was wonderful. You added so much, and we hope to see you at the next Women in Film event. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Night.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.